So originally I was actually going to do a JP and NA like release servants for 2020, but then, you know, I got all of these servants, right? And I was like, well, if I double that, just, you know, throwing in the JP servants, and then I also throw in like free-to-play servants and stuff as well, I'm going to be here for quite a long time. So I decided to just go with like summonable NA servants, right? That release, like free-to-play units, just the summonable ones on the NA version of the game, just to kind of like see the quality of units that we got over here on NA during 2020. I'm thinking about doing one for the JP side as well. If you guys would like to see that, let me know in the comments down below. I will obviously link this tier list up here in the description if you guys want to go ahead and make your own tier list as well. I'd be kind of excited to see where you guys would rank certain characters. But starting off, I think pretty obvious we can slap Scotty up in the Scotty tier. She literally took the quick archetype and just made it into probably the most viable type right now, right? And quick is going to be on top for like the next 2 years until Castoria comes out. Buster is kind of always just sitting in the shadow being like, yeah, we blow people up, we do big damage, but you know, they don't really have the same farming potential and just ease of use that quick and arts will have. But for right now, it's the quick meta, right? And so it's pretty much Scotty's world right now on FGO, and your account is either you have Scotty or you don't have Scotty. And so you're either farming in pain like I am, having to use like your waiver and like a friend Scotty, or you're just casually obliterating everything in the game. So that is why Scotty's up at her own little tier. But actually, surprise, surprise, I'm going to put him in the Scotty tier as well for pretty much the same reason, right? He's kind of slept on in his ability, but I feel like people also kind of know this about him. But he can borderline solo anything in the game. Like, if you have him, there's no need for support casters or anything, because he just beats everything in the game. There's nothing he can't solo. And well, that's not quite as... I mean, there's some people that like soloing things, right? But it's not quite as fun as, like, using an actual team comp and using all your other servants. He is that same level of broken, right? Where if you have this one servant, it is GG. And in fact, he might even be more broken than Scotty, right? Because Scotty still requires you to have, like, say, an NP3 Dante's or, like, an NP5 Lancelot, and you're going to need a scope, or you need Parvati with X, you know... You need all of this other stuff to go with Scotty to beat everything in the game, whereas this guy, it's like you just level him up, you level up his skills as per usual, and you're off to the races. Anything can be beaten. I mean, it might take a little bit, but everything will be beaten with this guy. So I would argue that he goes up in that tier with Scotty. He is definitely a heavily slept on servant. I didn't see a whole lot of people summoning for him when he came out on NA, which I was baffled. I was surprised that people were not summoning for this man, just considering his reputation. But with that out of the way, there's not really anybody else that is on that same just absolute level of broken that Scotty and he was on this year. So now we'll move into just kind of going through these guys as per usual. Now, then we got Achilles. I don't want to be too mean to Achilles, but I kind of just see him as like somewhat of like a mid-tier-ish servant. Because he's not bad. Like, don't misunderstand. Mid-tier is like, you can break this guy out for farming, and they'll do that pretty well, but they're not going to do anything like super exceptional. That's kind of what Achilles does. He's just like a good like quick farmer. He has like a battery, he has NP gain, he has a quick buff, so he works pretty well with Scotty. But outside of that, he's not really doing anything special. He's not like elevating the team to like this higher level, or he's not... he's not just like capable of doing insane amounts of like mean damage. He's just like a very, very solid servant, which actually by that definition I might just put him in high tier, because I feel like having Achilles in mid actually is a little bit disrespectful, but he's definitely like a decent high tier servant. Same thing with Anastasia. She was kind of slept on when she released, but you know, she's an AoE caster, 50% battery, does decent damage, has Pierce invincibility, so she has some use in challenge quest. She has a charisma. I'd argue she's probably a bit better than Achilles because her battery and everything is bigger. She's an art servant, so she will be able to loot easier when the girl Castoria comes out. So that's kind of like they're just gonna be sitting in high tier. Atalanta Altar, she's definitely pretty mid. Despite how much I love Atalanta Altar, she's not super exceptional. She doesn't really do anything super well. I mean, she's got like the regular like Saber Okita syndrome where she's got like 3 skills and they're all kind of basic, but it's just like that Saber Okita, her hits are super good and it's just a perfect combination. This Atalanta, even after her buffs, just kind of like missing something. And to be fair, she could still get buffed in the future and definitely change, but as of right now, she's not super exceptional, not anything too crazy. Like, I mean, even then, like I was gonna say, like, well, if you have Scotty, she might be good, but I was like, but even then, you're off with like better choices for like a single target character. If you're going up against Lancers, you'll just bring Okita instead. You're going up against Archers, well, I guess you just bring Parvati because Parvati just memes everything with Scotty, even when she is AoE. But then we have Bradamante, and man, Bradamante also, like, I think the only thing keeping her out of low tier is the fact that she does have a battery, and it's a targetable battery, but dude, she came out and she couldn't even loop her own, like, node in the Christmas event. Like, the last node was an Archer node, and I was like, oh, surely Bradamante can loop that, like, quite easily, because, you know, they put out Bradamante, she's a quick servant, they made the last node Archer, and so it's like, I pulled out, I tried, okay, so I might not be the best person to do it, but I tried it with one Scotty and, you know, a waiver to kind of see how it does, because Lancelot can get that done. You know, my Lancelot, he never lets me down, and I was able to get that done with Parvati as well, but Bradamante just fell flat really hard. Like, she was not farming that at all whatsoever, and I was very disappointed with her performance. So she's just not built very well. She needs buffs really badly. Like, they need to give her some EP gain or just massive amounts of damage. They just really need to help Bradamante out, because she's just not a very exceptional servant. Now, Chiron is a pretty good servant. Chiron is a kind of a spurg, and let me just this is the first time I'm actually gonna pull somebody up, because I might be able to make the argument that Chiron should be a god tier servant. Not because of this, not because of, well, I mean, this is good, right? He's basically giving everybody a waiver style crit buff for 3 turns, and then dropping stars for them, just not very much. But this right here, this is pretty insane. Chiron functions as somewhat of like a support unit. Like, you could run double Chiron, because he's going to make somebody go like Super Saiyan 3 with 60% to all their card types, and then 100% crit damage for 3 turns. Like, it's absolutely insane what Chiron is going to be capable of doing for people. And I mean, because of that, I think Chiron is like a very slept on like god tier, and his NP's not bad either, right? Like, it's just like, you can't dodge my NP. Wait a minute. Oh, he eats off Solemn Defense? That'll be really interesting, because I'm assuming we're gonna fight Castoria and okay, so there is a way around Solemn Defense. Dang, so it's not that's a little disappointing. Anyway, so a little depression aside, I think Chiron should definitely be in god tier, because while I think, you know, Anastasia and Achilles are just like good solid farming servants, and, you know, you can bring them generally everywhere, Chiron has that potential to be like, just to bring your team to like a different level, especially if you want to run him as, like, say, a secondary DPS / support. He's going to function so well in one of those positions. So I think Chiron is very slept on, and I think he's a very good servant that came out this year. And considering he's a 4-star, if you pulled on the Apocrypha banner, you probably do have him at higher NP levels, which means his damage is going to be very good as well. In fact, I do want to go ahead and check where he actually sits on the FGO damage slider thing. I imagine it would be quite high, although I will cry if it's like low. Oh no, it's not looking good. Oh, okay, no, he's decently up there. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of in a bad spot because Chloe is free to play, so her damage is kind of like low here, but this is like her true damage because she's a free NP5, so Chloe's closer to like being the second strongest, right? So anyway, I think he's very good. Consort U, I'll put her at the top of or I'll put her above, I don't know, somewhere here in mid tier. I mean, she's not as low tier as I would like maybe, look, see, when we're done with the list, maybe I'll start bumping people down the low tier and stuff. Maybe the tiers will be shifted around. But she's not the worst servant in the world. She is an AoE assassin. She does yeet her own buffs off, but I believe she has like debuff resistance or something, so she can avoid yeeting her own buffs off as well. But I mean, she has value in being an AoE assassin. That's a 4-star. That's not Shuten Doji. That's not Okita Alter. That's not Semiramis. It's not these like high limited servants. Or like your other option being using Phantom of the Opera, right? Like I guess you could also use Kotaro, I guess, but you know, she's at least a 4-star, so she's a bit beefier, you know, so I think she has some value in that, but that's really all I think she's bringing to the table. I don't think she does anything else super exceptionally well. Diarmuid Saber is very, very good. Slap him up in high tier. He's like a single target version of Achilles, right? He has like the NP gain, the quick buff, he has the dodge for survivability. He's built very, very well. I believe he removes defensive buffs on his NP as well. Although I think for him, what kind of holds him back is that if I remember correctly, his activates after he uses his NP. It doesn't activate first. Yeah, see, it doesn't activate first, so that is kind of like a sucky thing for him, is that he doesn't activate first, so that is a little bit sucky. But he basically is just like a single target version of his Achilles. He's very, very solid. Ibaraki Lancer, kind of a mid-tier servant. Wasn't exactly blown away with what she was doing, but actually, yeah, see, I'm gonna actually have to bump these people down, because I think Ibaraki definitely is far more usable than these servants are. Like, I would definitely slap her on the team before I would slap on any of these three, because she's just like generic, like, I'm gonna go do some damage, you know, unga bunga boom boom. Like, Buster servants just, that might be a trend, that they just don't look as impressive until we probably get like female Merlin coming out. Maybe then Buster servants will be revived, but right now Buster servants just don't look super impressive unless your name is Arjuna Alter. Ivan's not bad. I would say he's definitely a high tier servant that came out this year. He's basically like a challenge quest version of Iskandar, because he's got like NP gain. He's lowering like enemy buster resistance. He's like, because Iskandar's like, I'm doing damage now and I don't care about the next turn. But Ivan's like, okay, I'll do some damage now, but then I'll NP gain so I can get my NP back easier. I have a survivability method. I'm going to lower your resistance to my buster card so I can do more damage. He's going to, you know, drop crit stars and everything for himself. So Ivan is just like challenge quest version of Iskandar, and it's very, very good. It actually does give him somewhat of a niche outside of, you know, Iskandar and Drake. Because Iskandar and Drake were basically the two AoE riders, right? And it was like, well, Iskandar does more damage, but Drake has a battery, and so that's what people would like go back and forth on it, even though having a 50% battery is way better than doing slightly more damage. Ivan kind of separated himself by being oriented around challenge quests, and I think that helps him out a lot. Izo is very solid as well, but I do think he's kind of mid. Unfortunately, he is a 3-star, so his stats aren't super, super high. And as a servant, his kit is kind of basic. I know you see people like grail him a lot on your support list, but that's just because people really like the character of Izo. There's not like some secret thing where it's like, oh, Izo's like the next coup, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's unkillable and you gotta grail this 3-star. It's like, you don't even have to grail coup necessarily, right? Like, grails in the long run really don't do anything super great for your servant. It's like a little bit of extra stats here and there, but it's more just to show this is a servant I really, really like. But Izo's definitely solid. He's kind of like, I guess, the arts version of what I think Ibaraki is, where they're just like, okay, go in there, bang, bang, boom, we do some damage, and that's kind of it. We'll leave it at that. John Archer, this might just be me having, like, you know, foresight in the future, but she literally is the AoE version of the Artoria Archer, and that translates to being a very good unit once Castoria comes out in 2 years. Now, John Archer is already very good right now with her looping potential, but when Castoria comes out, she becomes like premier like AoE arts, you know, archer person. So she gets very, very good when Castoria comes out, but her kit itself right now is already very, very solid. It's already a very high tier good servant, and it's just like, with knowledge of the future, you know, that's the good thing about being an NA player for FGO, is that I can look 2 years in the future and be like, oh, is this servant going to hold up and still be good? And yes, they do hold up and they are still very, very good. So John Archer is definitely one of the better units to come out this year. Very, very solid. Lan Ling, it's very hard for me to rank Lan Ling because if I'll pull him up, he's definitely a supportish type unit, right? Because, yeah, so there's his charisma, his survivability. He gives somebody NP gauge, but yeah, it's more of like this is like one of the major things when he first came out. I was like, ooh, that's really nice. And it's weird because like he's giving 20% NP, but the thing I was like, oh, dude, he's giving them 40% buff success rate. But overall, it's just a very powerful skill, right? Because you can take somebody that has a 60% chance to get a monstrous buff, and he's like, well, not only will I give you that, but I'll give you, you know, just a little suck with this NP gauge. And then I believe his NP is non-damaging. Yeah, there's also his art support, and he's buffing all of this. So you're supposed to kind of use it on himself to make everybody go Super Saiyan 3 for a bit, but you can also throw this on somebody like Ozymandias or something. Well, not Ozzy's a bad example because Ozzy already gives himself buffs to sex 3, but like Cleopatra, how about that? You can give it to someone like Cleopatra. For whatever reason, if they're on the same team. I don't know why I'm making these weird team builds, but you get what I'm saying. This has very good utility, or you can use it on himself, and he's just a very solid support unit. Very good for like challenge quests and stuff. So I think I'm actually going to slap him in the God tier as well for the same reason that Chiron is in God tier. I just think he's a very, very solid support. I think reducing enemy NP gauge is very, very good. Giving everybody DR for 3 turns, very solid. A free 30% attack buff is very nice. This is one of those NPs you can throw it first and not worry about it because it's going to lower their enemy's NP gauge. It's going to make you take less damage, and then the overcharge doesn't have insane scaling. As you can see, it only raises by 5 per overcharge. So it's just like, just throw this in the front. It doesn't really matter. Like, you're all good. You don't have to worry about like, oh, where do I place this NP? It's just, you throw it there. Everybody gets 30% attack on top of him already giving everybody attack when he's should be sticking around for a while because he's got good survivability. This is very solid. It can either help him get his NP, which again funnels into helping your entire team out, but then it also can help him with this, which this is very solid. 20%. This is almost like cast skill in one skill, right? Because cast skill gives like attack, crit star gen. He gives more crit star gen, and then he also gives like I believe a bigger art buff. I believe he gives like 30%, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. I might be wrong on that though, but it's almost like cast skill rolled into one skill, just a bit better as a art support servant. So I think Lan Ling is very, very good. I was just kind of like when I saw him on the list, I was like, where do I put him? Because I was like, he is really just an art support servant before arts is super meta. The only problem with Lan Ling though that I'll say is that as good as I think he is, you're still definitely gonna run like Nero Bride, like double Nero Bride as your team. And I guess for those of you guys that don't know, Nero Bride is baby Castoria for all intents and purposes. She gives a very big attack buff, she gives a lot of NP gain, and she gives like 30% NP gauge. So if you're art servant, if your art servant, you know, your looper right here is good enough, you know, you can already kind of start the arts meta already. Mave Saber is also pretty good. It's more of the question of like high or mid tier, because Mave Saber's not insane, which is not bad, which I feel like is the definition of being mid. But I don't want to put her in mid because she has this, which I hate. I hate the NP gauge per turn. I know it's good for like challenge quests and things, but she does get a very sizable amount of it. Like normally it's like, oh, I get like 5% NP per turn. You're like, well, that sucks. But she's like, I get 20% for 3 turns, which does mean it'll help her out in even farming, right? So like if you could start her off at like relatively 100% NP, and then she can just like pop this, it means she can start helping to gen her NP every single turn to kind of help her farm through each wave. Yeah, reduces arts resistance, which is good because that's a unique buff, right? That not a lot of, well, not unique, but you know what I'm saying, like it's a very rare debuff to give somebody. And then that I guess is fine, like 20% is not bad. Her NP, I mean, it's kind of like this. Is you can do a lot of damage. I believe, actually, let me go over here, because I think that's what they have her calc somewhere. Where is she? Oh, they don't have it. That's weird. They used to, okay, so if I recall correctly, they used to have it down here where it was like, they would be like, oh, if she got like this many nice shots off, then, you know, she would win. Or like, she'd not win, but she would do this much damage. but they don't have it, so it's a little odd. Anyway, I think I'm just gonna slap her in mid. I don't want to think too much about it, so just slap her in there. MHXX, pretty high tier Pog unit. I think she could also go a little higher. She might be able to go in God tier just because she has this like really good niche as like a foreigner servant, and the foreigner class isn't exactly like popping off with units right now in NA. If we go over here, it's literally like, alright, so you have Abigail, who's like Buster single target, you have Hokusai, who's AoE arts, and you have this lady over here. You got bro, what's her name? She's a single target arts, bro, I already forgot. So it's like you're not exactly popping off over here. And then Yang is going to come out. I believe she's AoE arts as well. You're going to be quick AoE. You are Buster AoE, if I recall correctly. Right? Yeah, okay. And then you are just quick support. So Foreigner's not really popping off with the single target units. It's really like, well, you use her or you use her for single target, and Arts is definitely popping off a bit better. So you might want to say that she's like a god tier unit because of that, right? She's a 4-star. She's like the best single target Foreigner, basically. I think, let me check her damage. Yeah, her damage is still quite high. This threat to humanity thing, by the way, that scales very well with Castoria, her being an art servant, because Castoria's arts buffs the like your arts performance, and then it also buffs your damage to threats to humanity. So like MHXX becomes like really good for killing sabers, zergs, or just trees. Like she's very good for chopping down trees. So perhaps you could put her in god tier for that, because of how like good of a niche she fills, but then also how just generally good she is, right? Like she's just a very solid servant overall as well. So perhaps you could put her in god tier for that. I'm not exactly married to the idea of her being in god tier. You could put her at the top of high tier, bottom end of god tier. Either or is really fine for me. I'm not really super high on either idea. Napoleon is definitely like a very high tier servant. He's literally just like Gilgamesh in 2020, right? Like it's just not, I don't even want to say updated Gilgamesh because their damage is relative. If we check Archer right here, yeah, their damage is very, very relative. And then even when like he gets divine and then he gets hitting a non-star servant, their damage stays very relative. They're in the pocket very similarly to one another. It's just the reason people like put Gilgamesh a bit higher is because his buff of hitting a non-star servant is very, very common. Although Napoleon's divine, his anti-divine trait, that just continues to get better because we're fighting all these god tier servants in all of the lost belts and everything. So that's just going to continue to help Napoleon be better. Because we're just like, oh, we're going to Olympus, and they're like, well, here's like 500 more divine characters in the game, and Napoleon's like, yes, please, more divine people for me to shoot down. So, you know, Napoleon just constantly keeps getting better with his thing. But at the end of the day, he really is just like Unga Bunga Gilgamesh, right? So I think it's just a very high tier trait right there. He's just very, very solid because it allows him to farm very well, but it also allows him to do well in some single target areas because his damage does kind of get high enough to where you can use him in those areas. So he's always good for that. Okita Alter, I'm going to slap probably around here in the high tier as well. I'm not exactly wowed with Okita Alter. Yeah, because I wasn't exactly impressed with her damage. To be fair, she is the highest damaging AoE alter ego, if that means anything to you, but to be fair, Kiara hits like a wet sock, bro. Like, she doesn't hit very hard at all. So, it's not exactly saying a whole lot. I'm just not exactly wowed with her kit. Like, she looks really good when we, like, look at her kit and everything, right? Like, you look at, her hits and everything, and you're just like, oh, her quick hits are so high, and then she gives a quick buff, so, like, she should be able to gen NP with her quick cards, and her arts card is still very solid. Her buster hits are high, so she can actually like gen stars from those as well, and her extra attack is good. I think this did help her out a lot, the attack buff there, but for right now it's just like a 30% battery is good, and then she has like NP damage on top of that, and then she has like a dodge as well, but I don't know, I just always find her to be just a little underwhelming when I've used her. I don't exactly know what it is, but I still can acknowledge that she's still like very high tier, right? Like everything does culminate in her being a very solid servant. being an alter ego does mean that she hits all the cavalry classes for super effective damage and the knight classes for half damage. But that does mean she's very, good for like mixed class waves. So if you're still using, buster farming, you could pull out Okita alter and it's like, oh, casters and riders, I'll take care of both of those. But then if it's like casters and sabers, she's like, oh, please don't send me in there, I don't want to die. So, yeah, kind of mid on there. Yeah, sorry, my boy Salieri. I'm not super impressed with Salieri. Let me slap him out here. Low damage. I mean, I guess you could say that maybe you have him at MP5 because maybe you bowled out on his banner. He is on every banner, so chances of you having an MP5 are pretty good. It's just, I don't know. He's just kind of just basic .jpeg unit, He's like, alright, we get some crit damage, pretty good, 30%, not a whole lot though. Get 30% arts buff, that's pretty good, pretty decent. Lower the enemy defense by 30%, pretty decent. Deals damage to everybody, so he's an AoE Avenger. We all know all those ruler waves we're fighting, that's pretty good, right? Reduces their arts resistance by 10%, bro, that's a hell of a lot of arts resistance there. I know I'm making fun of him right now, but he's passable, but come on, like, let's go look at our Avenger buddy. Let's go look at our alternate options again. So, you're telling me you're gonna use Salieri over like Dante's, Mami Nobu, Pistar, Gorgon even? Hell no, bro. And then in single target cases, like, bro, if you don't have Jean Archer, you definitely have Edgy Ushi or at least Logo. Like, come on, don't play with me, man. He's better than Angermini, I'll give him that, but that's not really saying much, alright? That's the ZTL seal of approval, better than Angermini. So Semiramis, actually kind of mid, not gonna cap. Yeah, like if we look at her kit and everything, she's an AoE assassin with a battery, alright? So I think she's very good for that. But damage is quite mid, if I'm being honest. And I believe where is it? Yeah, it's here. So using her for farming can be kind of a pain in the ass because to get the buster resistance you need 8 stars or more, and it is a very high buster resistance. Like let's not cap. I'm not gonna cap here. But the odds sometimes of you having 8 stars in just like traditional farming nodes can be quite low sometimes. It just kind of depends on who you have attacking. But if you're doing just like if you're having to use Semiramis, you're probably using like Unga Bunga method, right? So it's like, I don't know, who do you have? Like Cleopatra is as your first attacker, then like Semiramis is like 3rd wave or 2nd wave. So it's like, I don't know who you could have. Like, let's actually just look. Like who? Maybe you could have Okita alter as like wave 1 to produce stars, wave 1 or wave 2 to produce stars for her. I don't know, but you can see where I'm coming from. Like this is kind of the main part of her damage. This is where Semiramis is like doing it, and obviously that's what they calced into here, right? That's why her damage looks passable right here, because they didn't bother to be like, oh well, you'll probably get it like most of the time, so they didn't bother calculating it separately. But I imagine if she doesn't have that up, it's bad damage time. So this really does hurt Semiramis a lot. It makes her not as consistent, I would say, as like say the farmers we have up here. Like these guys are just gonna kind of come out here. They're just gonna kind of pop off, do some good damage and everything, and they're gonna be fine. This is kind of like a nice niche skill, but it doesn't really. I mean, I guess if you're using her in challenge quests, that's fine. I mean, I like seeing stuff like that, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. And her battery is only 30%. So maybe if she had like, I don't know, like maybe she had like a 50% battery, it would kind of help balance things out a little bit, because then you'd be like, well, like she has like a 50% battery, but she does like less damage, because then you can just be like a wave 1 person, right? Then it should be fine. But it's 30%, kind of, you know what I'm saying? And she's only giving herself 10% MP damage beforehand. So that's really the only buff you have if you can't get this off. It really is gonna hurt her damage. So yeah, she's definitely like mid tier. She's definitely sitting in here. She kind of got hurt. Now Sigurd is a god, bro. Sigurd, that is a man right there. Sigurd is a god unit, bro. Look at this man. Let's wait, get these out of here, bro.
This is for you.
This man, I've gone over this man like 5 times on this channel so far, and I think we're all on the same page when we say that Sigurd is very good, but like, bro, look, 100% crit damage. That is Merlin crit buff right there, and you get it for 3 attacks. So it's not even wasted, right? You don't waste any attacks, right? To be fair, you could probably just say that like 3 turns flat would have been better, because you could potentially get more crits in 3 turns than just 3 guaranteed attacks.
Things away.
But it is 100% crit damage. That is a lot of crit damage. That is unga bunga Merlin levels of crit. Because remember, this guy is a Buster servant, so he has 2 Merlins next to him that are like, here's 300% crit damage for 1 turn, and then the next 2 attacks, or you could even pop off with just 1 entire turn. You could just do a Brave Chain of crits at that point. And that just sounds disgusting, right? It just sounds gross. It doesn't know how much damage you're gonna be doing. He has a survivability with his Buster, right? But I would argue that this is probably, if you're going to do it, this is the best way to do it, right? Is to do it with Guts, because Guts lasts a few turns anyway. So it's like you can pop this off and be like, well, my Guts will still be around for 2 more turns after my initial damage turn. So if I do die, it's not wasted. It can still get wasted because you didn't use it at the exact time you needed it, but it's still better than it being like, oh, it's my 1 turn Buster and my 1 turn like dodge or something. Plus, arguably, Guts is better than having like just an invincibility or a dodge, right? Because those can be pierced. Guts, you're just going to live no matter what. And if you're doing like a solo setup, it does stop the enemy's attack when they proc your Guts. So you can actually buy yourself an extra turn and stuff. So it's very, very good for those challenge quests and things. And then this is like, this needs some type of buff. I get what they're trying to do. It's kind of like what is it? Like a mirror to like Brynhilder's skill, because Brynhilder's is like a heal and crit star gather rate, right? So it's like, this is kind of like, oh, well, he gives crit star generation and debuff immunity, and they're both targetable. Like, it's a cute little thing. It's like, yeah, I get it. You guys are trying to be cute, but throw something else on here, right? Make it just a bit better. If they slap on like 20% NP or like 30% NP gain, or I don't know, like it drops crit stars as well. It gives it like a party-wide attack buff. It gives I don't know what they would slap on here. But if they just slap something on there, just something, just a little carrot on top, right? Just a little carrot, a cherry on top. It's over. It's like the best saber in the game. Like, because this is better than it looks. Because he can give it to himself, or he can give it to like his support casters to basically prevent one of his support casters from just getting obliterated by like a stun or a charm or something. Or he can use it for himself in solo quest. And then 100% this right here, this is going to allow his Buster cards to actually gen decent amount of stars, and his quick cards to gen just a hell of a lot of stars, right? And then his, where is it? His NP has 7 hits. So he can drop some decent stars with that as well, because people forget Buster cards can drop stars as well. It's Quicks do it the best, Buster does it the second best, and then Arts cards inherently don't drop stars, so they need massive buffs to actually drop stars. So, like a case in point, like look at Iskandar and Emiya. They drop hella stars, right, in their Buster servants. That's kind of like their whole point. So he's very, very good for that. He can kind of provide himself his own stars, and he can also kind of help his allies out. Say you have like, I don't know, you have like a secondary DPS that has like very good, like, I don't know, like Okita Alter, right? If Okita alters your secondary DPS, I mean, you're running like her to like wave clear people because it's like a boss and like a bunch of tiny mobs. So you're using Okita Alter for that, and you're using Sigurd to kill the main boss, and then you have like Merlin as your third unit. He can give this to Okita Alter to make her like a crit star gen machine, dude, and just turn her into an absolute apex predator, you know? His NP does get buffed. This is just better for him in like challenge quests, but really the main thing is that it buffs his damage. But since he is a kind of like a challenge quest servant, that does help him out a lot. This has literally just been the Sigurd section, because Sigurd is a god, alright? He is a dude. That is a man right there, okay? That's a dude. And I want people to understand, Sigurd was a very solid servant that came out. Like, here's the thing. Sigurd came out right before Scotty did, right? And I was just like, do I summon for Sigurd before Scotty comes out? Because Sigurd is that good, especially because I didn't have Musashi. So like if you had Musashi, you're like, I can kind of hold out. because Musashi and Sigurd are very relative in how good they are, right? They're very, 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 very close. But I was like, dude, Sigurd is way too good for me to pass up on. So I was just like, I don't know, man. Sitsunai is very much like MHXX, where I'm like, I'm not married to the idea of her being a god tier servant that came out this year, but I'm not exactly like opposed to her being in the top of high tier either. If we look at alter egos, she's pretty up here in the damage. But her kit's just very solid, right? She has her fiberability, she gives everybody tanking. Her third skill is like very something that like Landling can help out with, but 30% arts buff for 3 turns is good for looping. Debuff immunity is very solid, and then this is a pretty poggin skill, right? Like 20% attack, star refund, and then a 30% battery. Keep in mind the battery's guaranteed, but this is where stuff like Landling and like Lakshmi Bai and Ozzy, that's where those characters kind of come in and help her out with this, because 80% you'd think would be high enough to be like, it's guaranteed, but you'd be surprised that it's how many times it doesn't even proc. But her NP very solid. You know, this is just kind of weird. I mean, outside of that, it's like decent damage, reducing defense, reducing crit chance. It's all good, and this is just kind of like a nice little bonus effect that she has if she's fighting dragons. But she's very good. You could maybe persuade me into saying she's god tier, but especially because like it's like, oh, MHXX is in there, but Sitsunai is not exactly in that same position, because part of the idea of me like putting her in god tier is how niche she is and how like exclusive of a role she fills and how well she does that, right? And I think she does that very, very well. She has this like exclusive role as like your single target foreigner, because I would definitely, and they just put out a mid-ass unit. You're like 40% battery. That's pretty good. But where's the additional effect, man? Where's like the NP gain and stuff, you know what I'm saying? Why is this not a more complete skill? Quick performance, but it's tied to my evasion. So you were really playing this game. Third skill, star absorption, but for 1 turn. Sad. Debuff immunity, 1 turn. We'll accept that. And then this chance to remove enemy buffs. Nice little niche, I suppose. Removes their offensive buffs. Reduces their quick resistance by 20%. We just get mid the servant. We just get disappointment, fellas. We're sad. Because Summer Ushi could have been so much more. But she's mid. Anyway, now that I feel like I killed the mood, we have Valkyrie next. Valkyrie's pretty either high mid or somewhere in high tier, right? Because she's literally just like I don't know if I want to say where's Parvati, like, but where's Valk? Where's she at? The damage is pretty significant, right? So like 16,000 down here, 20,000. That's a almost a 5,000 attack difference, bro. That's getting kind of whack. But her kit's not bad. Her kit's definitely solid. You know, 30% quick buff for 30 turns, NP damage, very good. This is going to let her do some pretty big damage. It's going to let her, you know, actually potentially loop. Survivability doesn't inherently really matter all that much. Just like, you're going to be farming, so who cares? And the NP regen is nice, I suppose, but it's like, you really need NP gain. You really need NP gain. You really need, like, a fat battery. Well, not even fat, because Parvati only has like 10%. But Parvati, like, let's not misunderstand here, fella. Oh, you get down there, buddy. Well, let's not misunderstand. Let me simp for a little bit, bro. Look at this. Look at this. 30% quick and NP gen, bro. Oh my goodness. I literally busted a nut just looking at that. Look at this. Attack. More damage. 50% attack, bro. Ugh, to finish off the third wave. Crit star generation. Hella stars, bro. Hella stars. For whatever, even though this doesn't really matter because you're probably just gonna kill them anyway. And then, bro, 20% targetable battery. Basically a 10% battery for yourself. Just to top you off in case you're just missing that little bit of extra NP, bro. Just in case. And then look at this. Doesn't even need a buff because look at that. Bam. gives herself even more NP. Bam, damage. Being a clown, but yeah, I think that's kind of what hurts Valkyrie. If Parvati didn't exist, and if Parvati wasn't a god herself, then the Valks would probably have a better niche, but because Parvati exists, and Parvati's been on like 400 billion of the choose a 4-star ticket, and she was on like the not the FG, but the Fate Stay Night like release banner, and everyone was like, oh my god, Sakura's in the game, she's hot, and she has a costume on release. It was like, oh my goodness, everybody cooned when she came out. So you probably have Parvati, probably aren't going to be using Valve very often, right? Like Parvati already out damages her at base, and you probably have higher MPs with Parvati from her. You know, like, don't lie to me, bro. I know you something for Sakura. Don't lie to me. Zhang Yu, King of Mid, maybe. See, yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, well, maybe he's kind of like Ivan, but I was like, nah, he ain't like Ivan. He ain't built the same as Ivan. Look at him all the way down here. Look at this dude all the way down here at 23k attack. Less than Raikou, bro. Imagine being outdamaged by wet noodle Raikou over there. Nah, bro. Nah, son. Nah, I can't believe it was a buff they gave this man. Now, 2% crit damage in the future. That'll be pretty nice. But then this... Give me a loop with this dude? Nah, son. He needs something. He needs, like, NP gain. Like, slap like, NP gain on this, and this man's pretty good. How about that? You slap some NP gain right there. 50% NP gain for 3 turns, he becomes a monster. But this is my tier list, alright? If you disagree, I mean, that's within your right. I mean, go ahead and disagree. Make your own tier list in the comments down below. Let me know why you think I'm a nincompoop, because I have Chinese man up here with Scotty in the Scotty tier. But with all that being said, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace late, guys.